Good day. This will be a video to discuss the upcoming essay over drama and also to go over some details about the research paper. We currently have 2 weeks left in the semester. It's a fast and furious time as you go through summer, so I want to make sure I go over some details there and get those clarified for you. Currently on the screen, what you should be seeing is the drama unit. I do have a number of different lectures that have been previously recorded in which I discuss the different plays. And you can see there's quite a few of those, so you hopefully have had a chance to watch some of those in order to get some background about the plays. I've also given you some other aspects, another video about Oscar Wilde's play, study guide for Midsummer Night's Dream, some notes, and then a commentary about plays themselves, Tragedy in the Modern World by Arthur Miller. That is, just to give you some background to reconsider the idea about the nature of tragedy. When you look through your essay topic, I have it here for you. I also have an example essay for you over the drama topic. The essay over drama is a little different focus for you. Rather than giving you a general topic, as I did with the short story essays, and you had to select your own story, you had to select a feature or something you wanted to focus on. I gave you a little more of a direct approach to it. Again, this opening part, very standard, telling you what you need to do, how you're going to look at a particular aspect, the idea about not engaging in a conversation. Do not use you when you're writing. You're making a formal commentary about the work. You're not engaging in a conversation with the reader. Do not tell the reader, you will see this, you'll recognize this, or as you look at this. No, don't do that. Instead, you're focused on an analytical discussion where you're looking at it in that objective manner so that you can offer a logical discussion of your points as you're building your argument. Again, follow MLA format. Please make sure you double space your essay, have paragraphs, etc. Do not worry about outside research. Now, within your textbook, you do have some critical comments about some of the plays, and those may be useful for you to use. And if you do decide to use any of that, you are required to do citations. Again, do not use any AI generation, no plagiarism, or anything along those lines. I don't think we have to worry about that one. 800 to 1,000 words or so is what you're looking at. You can go over that, which will be fine, because you may have an approach that will require more development in order to get the details there. Again, the topics are phrased as yes, no questions, but that's not how you answer them. And I'll talk about that here in a moment. Each of the topics looks very individually at the plays. The first one is about Antigone, and you're asked to decide which of the two major characters, Antigone, Creon, can be considered to be justified in the approach to the issue. The conflict between the two centers around, of course, the law that, the edict that Creon offers regarding the burial of Polynices, or the refusal to bury Polynices. And you have that situation, so you're asked to look at the two. This taking one side of the conflict and arguing that Antigone is justified, Creon is justified, whichever one you decide to support. The second one focuses upon Oedipus, the play, and the character of Oedipus. He is banished, and again you had to do a question over that for the drama unit. You were asked to do one of those. And so I focus on the idea about the banishment, because that's really where we start seeing matters about Oedipus and his choice as opposed to his fate. In the case of the banishment, literally he is the one who banishes himself. He tells Creon, who's going to take over as the regent, banish me. It is an order that Oedipus is still giving, even though he has been revealed as the murderer of Laius, the father of children with his own mother. And so you have this idea. So you're asked to look at this. He pushes to find out the answer, even though he's warned by several, especially Tiresias, that you do not want to know this information. And as a result, he is banished. But if you argue that Oedipus has been fated to this end, that he is a victim of what has been predetermined circumstances, then does he deserve banishment? If that's eventually what is going to happen, is what's going to happen to him, is he guilty of anything? And if he's not guilty, does he deserve to be banished? So you're asked to think about those points when you're looking at that, if you're going to argue that particular one. The third topic looks at the play A Dollhouse, the play by Ibsen that really examines relationships. It really looks at this idea of how a woman of the 19th century has limits. Sort of a reflection to the Story of an Hour by Chopin, except that Nora literally has always accepted her position until the ending of this play, when she looks again and she rethinks the situation. And so you're asked to look at this idea of Nora's decision to leave, and she does. She walks out. Is that really though a step of independence? Or is she simply going off to a situation that will prove untenable for her? Does she, as it says here, deserve any sympathy or pity? Is she a sympathetic character? As you read through the play and look at the details, consider what's going on with her and what has happened. Consider her husband Torvald. Is he, as it says here, a victim of the standards of society just as much as Nora is, where he's the man who's expected to make the living, expect to run the household, etc. And so again, I ask you to take which character is more at fault for the situation. Is Nora the sympathetic figure? She's one deserving to be lauded for taking a step to break from the pattern. Or is Torvald simply conforming to what the standards of society are for him, and therefore he has to do what he has to do, treating her the way he does? Or is he at fault for this one? And again, you're asked to look at that as an argument. The next one concerns the importance of being earnest. One of the comedies you're asked to read of the plays. Importance of being earnest is a commentary by Oscar Wilde. If you look at the video and the notes that were posted for you about this play, they'll give you some understanding. But it is a commentary about society, especially about the dual nature, if you will, maybe of society, the hypocrisy. Lady Bracknell is the one who makes this comment, saying that we live in an age of surfaces, where everything is supposed to be maintained smoothly on the surface, don't explore below, because of what may be found. But Lady Bracknell is the one who, of course, objects to the potential marriage of her daughter Gwendolen with Jack, because he cannot produce parents, having been found as a baby in a handbag in a train station, which is how he gets his name, Worthing. But the idea is that she's also a figure. She comes from a really common background. If you go through the play, she marries into the upper class when she marries the general. Marries the Lord Bracknell. And the idea is that she's a figure who are also, let's not look at the surfaces, she's not accepting of Cecily when Algernon wants to marry her nephew. She objects until she finds out, of course, that Jack's ward is extremely wealthy. Then suddenly she becomes much more acceptable. Again, surface issues. So look at this comment that she makes, and looking through the play, argue whether the society is superficial or whether there is depth to it. And again, look at the relationships that are being offered. Gwendolyn, who wants to marry somebody named Ernest. Lady Bracknell objecting to Jack, all because of one situation he could not control, but on every other aspect, he's very much an acceptable suitor for her daughter. I mean, he's wealthy, he's respected in the area. He is, an individual of worth, to use the play on the name. And so again, think about that idea. The next two ask you to look at the play Midsummer Night Dream and gives you a couple different approaches. The first one looks at Hermia and Lysander's decision to place their feelings, their love for each other above everything else. They abandon Athens. They flee Athens because of the law. They place their regard for each other and consider that more important. This sort of harkens to the first question about Antigone, who sees the conflict between the law that Creon, the king, has imposed, and her own preferences, her view, her moral choice. Well, this is another one sort of like that one, that you get to argue whether that's what's most important, love over law, and use details from the play to support that. The second one about Midsummer Night Dream, you can choose out of these topics, looks at Helena and Demetrius and their relationship. Helena, who loves Demetrius, until, and Demetrius had even been engaged to Helena until he met her best friend, and then he dumps her, to use the vernacular. He literally dumps Helena to pursue Hermia. But Helena never abandons Demetrius, only worries about Demetrius' feelings. When they're going through the woods and Demetrius says, "Why are you following me?" and she says she can't resist him. And she makes the famous comment about treat her as he does his dog, beat her, and she'll still be happy about it. You look at this situation, and you see their relationship. And Demetrius' regard or lack of that for for Helena, is that acceptable? He tells her straight up, "I do not love you." But at the end of Act 4, when the juice is still in Demetrius' eyes and he's in love with Helena, they are going to go off and be married, and they are married when we look at Act 5. So I want you to think about what this relationship really is. Does it represent the qualities of love? Is this really a relationship that should have been maintained? And so you can argue that aspect on this one. And then the last one concerns Othello, a character who is a military hero, who has risen through the ranks, has been appointed to a general position. He is a man of command. And so you say, well, yes, he's a person who deserves respect. But he's also an individual who feels isolated. He is Moorish, which means he is an African living in a European society. He is married to Desdemona, a young woman, again European, white young woman married to a black general. And he feels perhaps a little threatened at that idea, so that it doesn't take much to convince him that she may be untrue. And he, of course, winds up killing his own wife. Maybe that's not a person who deserves respect, although he's tricked into it. And so as you go through the play and you look at his character, decide, is he a figure who is respected and should be respected? Even in making bad choices, is he still an individual who can be, maybe condemned for his actions, but still a man who deserves respect because of how he is tricked? And so again, these are the topics, and you should be working on this essay, getting it taken care of. Now, you also had some other assignments over drama. You had, if this will jump, bear just a moment. And it's not jumping. Okay, so we'll go down here. You had daily assignment over the basics of drama that was due a few days ago. And then questions over Oedipus and Antigone, due just a couple of days ago. If by some chance you overlook these, please send me your responses and I can get those uploaded for you. You'll have to send them as attachments, and I'll get that taken care of. If you have submitted them, they should be graded for you by now. And so you can be checking to see how your grades are coming along. As you're working on the essay topics, the video for Greek drama may help you a little bit. This is one that gives some background, especially over Oedipus and Antigone, and offer some comments. For instance, let me show you this very quickly. And it should open. May have to log in. Yes. You'll have to log in to access this video. And again, it's just your login for Cardinal ID. Trying to get this to... It's slowly loading. There we go. If you have not had a chance to watch this one yet, it's not a very long video. You'll see it's about a little over an hour. But you'll see it gives some background about the different details. But it also talks about Antigone very directly, including the challenge. And Creon's and his decisions. And so those are some to look at that may help you in regard to those. As it talks about, and again, you'll notice these sections are not very long. If you look, starting from here about politics, all the way through to the ethical decisions and the catharsis of Marcia, the idea of everything being worked through. You're looking at a grand total of less than 15, about 15 minutes or so, or 16 minutes of the play, of the details there. So again, something for you to look at and think about there. Again, useful videos, nicely handled. And so you might want to look at that one. And then, of course, I also, as I said, I have posted previously recorded lectures over the plays. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at some of those. Some are Zoom meetings from other times, and some are video discussions that I recorded when I was discussing the plays in the face-to-face class. So again, this is for your drama essay, and hopefully this will help you as you're approaching your essay, coming up with your idea about your topic, and looking at that one. I'm going to close this now and talk a little about the research paper. This is due toward the end of the semester, so you still have not quite 2 weeks to get this finished, but you should have worked on the outline, which seems to have disappeared on me here. Let's see, what happened to the outline? Yeah, the outline for it's not showing here where it's supposed to. Okay. That may have been part of the confusion for you folks. I have an example of how to do an outline of a literary essay here, but the actual assignment seems to have disappeared on me. Let me see what's going on with that. Well, it shows here, but it's not showing over here. Let me see. It should have been in the research paper module. And it doesn't seem to be there. I can get that fixed very quickly though. So we're going to add the assignment. And move that up. I apologize that seemed to have disappeared. Although you've been turning it in, it's just the actual assignment seemed to have disappeared here. Again, this is for you as you're working on your research paper. Make sure you have a good solid thesis. Make sure you have your key points you're trying to develop as you're looking at that. And again, you can download this form and type on it. To give you a better understanding of the research paper, you have, of course, in your textbook, and hopefully you've been looking at this, section about the literature research essay. And this particular aspect looks at and goes over the research format and details here. And what it's for. It's still a literature essay, just as the short story essay, the drama essay, both are. It's the same one where you're going to develop a debatable claim about literary work, at least one. In the case we're looking at poetry, and so you may want to look at one, but for some of the poets, you'll probably need more than one. I would go with, if you look at 2, 3, or 4 poems, because many of the ones I've selected for you have shorter poems, that will give you a good handle on it, where you're trying to look at same skills and strategy for the other two, but it's going to be a little more in-depth. It's going to involve a little more work in the sense of the details are needed, which is why I've asked you to do the outline for it. You get to draw on sources. Those are called secondary sources. The poems themselves are called the primary sources, and the secondary sources are the critical articles you get to look at. So you get to keep those in mind. And let's get this moving to the next part, where it shows you about the different approaches and details. We are not doing a biography. Don't tell me about the poet. Don't need that in the essay. That's not there. You're focusing strictly on the literary works. We don't need the people's lifestyles and what they did and where they lived, etc. None of that's needed. Again, you have to have an argument, a debatable claim, some thesis that is going to make a statement about those works, about major themes within the work, connected ideas, etc. You're going to pull information that's necessary, and you'll go through and, of course, offer views. What they do is give you some, if I can get this to work, yeah, there we go. They give you about authoritative sources. Please do not use Wikipedia ever for academic purposes. Do not go to .coms. I've given you a list of sources already, and we'll look at those in just a moment. If you need to look at some other ones, use the Blooms, use the Literature Resource Center. Again, avoid plagiarism. And as it says here, put quotation marks around quoted material. Correct source whenever you use a quote, whenever you use paraphrasing, whenever you use summaries. All those count. And they give you some ideas here about how you can set that up. And I'm not going to read those to you. That's something you can do. Again, how to document, how to go through and cite. That should have been covered for you in 1301, but more details are here. Again, some key aspects that you can look at, responsibility for quoting, as it says here, how you can set that up. This idea about the birthmark, for instance, this is a block quote. You tab it over. When it says 3 or fewer lines of a poem, you put slash marks between them. When you're going to quote 4 or more lines, then you're going to block it off. See how this is blocked off, tabbed over, to show that you're using that. And again, when you do that, when you quote the lines from a poem, you quote them and you type them up exactly how they appear within the poem. Which is why this line and this line are tabbed over a little extra, because that's how they appear in the poem. If you leave out a line, skip down to another one, that's what that shows. That's an ellipsis. And so you can see when you're quoting for your drama essay, here you go. Here's some details you can look at. And it talks about Antigone's exchange with Ismene. Well, here you go. You do that, and since it's written in verse, you'll do that as you would tabbing over and keeping the lines as they appear within the play. And so you can see how that's done. So again, you have some general rules you can review here. Effective quoting, how to do so. And they sort of give some example and explain it over here. This talks about ineffective quotation and then how you can fix that. The ineffective quotations form, the effective, and again you can read through those and look at that. Again, Wordsworth, how do you incorporate details and comments. Citation documentation being necessary. Oops. Okay, it's not working. Okay, there we go. Trying to get it to move and it wouldn't move. Here we go. So you have the parenthetical citation, which is what we've been using. Parentheses, name of the poet, and you don't necessarily have to put a page number for the poems. You can if it's out of our textbook. If it's others, you don't have to worry about that one. Just close the parentheses. Period goes after that, of course. Your works cited entry, you see how that looks right here. Again, first line goes against the left margin. Subsequent lines are tabbed over once. Again, you see how they do the different citations here. About O'Connor, Holga Joy, and Good Country People. Again, comment here and putting that. And you don't have to put, this is from Everything That Rises Must Converge. You don't have to put the whole title. Sometimes you can just put a shorter version. So you can see how to do that one. Again, some other details. The works cited, again, how it looks. This is supposed to be double spaced in case you can't tell. Everything's alphabetized. First line against the left margin. Subsequent lines are tabbed over. You can see they're using sources. In this case, the New York Times, which is acceptable. You'll see this is from their library resources, Journal of Popular Culture. You can see others are from credited sources. Again, how you do the textbook itself right here. The title of the textbook is italicized. That's why they have it highlighted. Short story title will be the poems. Titles of the poems would go inside quotation marks. You can see how all that's done. Again, details here how you can, if they have two authors, the first author who's listed gets the last name, then first name. Second would just be and then the name itself. You can see how that's done. So again, this gives you some ideas about sources. I'm going to move past all that. And they have a sample research paper for you to look at. Again, some details here, how it's set up, how to look at it, and again, the focus on how to incorporate details from this one. This is over a story. You can see the length, a couple thousand words is what you're looking at. This research paper will be a more in-depth look, more complex study of the works, and will require support. You'll see how they incorporate the different articles into it. And going down here, you'll see their works cited page, how those are incorporated. And so you have the different ones there. So hopefully that'll give you some ideas. Let me go back to course modules for your research paper, and gives you some views about that one. Again, the research paper itself, and we're going to look at it, has two parts. You're asked if you want to tell me about the author, because I've taught for quite a number of years, and students always want to put the biographical details, and I keep telling them that doesn't belong. So finally I said, okay, you want to tell me about the author? Great. You get to do it here. You get to submit a PowerPoint where you're going to focus on the biography of the author. You're also going to offer critical commentary about why this author is someone who deserves to have his or her work studied. So you're going to go beyond the facts of life. You're also going to do the critical reputation that this particular poet has. You have to have at least 15 slides, not including the title slide, not including the works cited slide, because you have to have a works cited slide on it as well. So you have that one, and I have an example for you of that. And it's going to jump any moment. Maybe not. Okay. You'll notice that the examples that I give you are sound ones. I don't try to give you exemplary ones. I try to give you ones that work. This is one of those. You'll notice there's a total of 17 slides. This is one. And then the 17th is a works cited slide. So there are only a total of 15 slides beyond those two. So this one did the minimum, and many of the slides are sort of minimal. Again, Poe's background, just a couple of details. This one's a little more elaborate. This one's just starts listing works, all it does. This one does the critical reception, what he's thought about his style, which is what makes him important, and what the critics have said about Poe, and why he is important, the inventor of the detective fiction, pioneer science fiction, and also the psychological horror story. So that's what makes him important. He was also, and really during his lifetime, this is what he was more noted for, was as a literary critic. He had a very solid reputation as a critic of literature, and that's really what he was known for. His works, his poetry and his short stories did not receive as much public attention. They didn't necessarily sell all that well, although they were well respected by other critics. He just wasn't hailed as such until later, really in the early part of the 20th century, latter part of the 19th century into the early part of the 20th century is when Poe's literary reputation developed more fully. And then here's his impact, in fact, by his death, and again the works cited. Again, this is a very simple, very straightforward PowerPoint. They didn't do that much with it, or he or she didn't do that much with it, which is okay. I mean, it hit the minimum, did what it was supposed to do. You can, if you want to be a little more developed with your PowerPoint, you're perfectly free to do so. And now let's look at the actual research paper assignment. I'll have it here for you. And I'll get that to zoom a little bit more. Again, the opening few paragraphs, basically the same as the other two, telling you what you need to do, how to set things up. Please make sure you use, when you're discussing literary works, use present tense. You're discussing the works now, so you always use the present tense. And even if you're discussing Edgar Allan Poe and talking about The Raven, you'll say Poe writes in The Raven. You say, but he's been dead since 1849. Yes, but you're examining the poem now, so you're discussing it in the present tense. No I's. You don't need to tell me I think, I believe, I find. That's unnecessary. Again, no U's. Don't address the reader. So keep that in mind. The source come from the TVCC library resources. Do not go elsewhere. You have to have at least 5 secondary sources, 5 critical articles, in addition to your primary sources, which would be the poems. I've given you some. If you find others that you want to use, please feel free to make use of some of those. If you go through Bloom's or through the Literature Resource Center and find some maybe another article or two that you find useful. I didn't try to put every one up there. I couldn't. It would take much longer. Again, do not use Wikipedia or any source ending at .com. It should be around 2,000 words or so, and you have to fulfill those. So at least 5 secondary sources, primary sources are used, everything coming from the TVCC LRC, nothing from Wikipedia or .coms. And again, you're looking at one of these, a critical study of work or works by one of these poets. You're not going to look at the lives of the poet. Themes can range from social injustice, law, individual inactivity. Well, there's all sorts of ones you can look at. And so I have for you different poets to choose from. And I have for you the articles. To give you an idea of this one, well, we'll just go with the first one. Well, no, let's go with this one. Harold Bloom was a professor at Yale who did a number of critical books that were really, when they were done in the 80s and 90s, and they kept going through the 2000s, were designed really for libraries, especially like public schools or smaller colleges who couldn't afford subscriptions to critical journals. There are a number of critical journals, and sometimes the cost of those could be very expensive. But he put together articles from those. He simply, put them into a book, 7, 8, or 9 at a time. He would generally write an introduction and opening critical comment, and then off it would go. And that's what this one is. So if you click on it, I'm going to open this in a new window. You have to log in, but I'm already logged in, and so it should call up the window for you. And there it is. There's the article. This particular one is by Bloom, where he offers a general commentary about Browning's dramatic monologues. My Last Duchess is one of those that you're looking at and hopefully reading. And you have some details here about other ones. Andrea del Sarto is a very good one. You see details there. And he just offers a very brief commentary about that one. Gives you some insights about those. What's also very useful, it has the citation tool. So you just have to copy and paste this. Now when you do so, it has to be adjusted. You'll notice it's not indented as it should be here, but that's fairly easily fixed. But you don't really have to do that because I've already done it for you. So literally you can just copy and paste this citation and place it on your works cited page if you find any comments that you're going to use out of that particular article. Now you'll notice that there's a second one that says Bloom on Browning. That's because he did multiple books. This one is about Robert Browning. This one is a general book about poets and poems. And so again, if you open this one up, it's a different article. And again, it just talks about Browning's poems, some of his major ideas. And you'll see some comments here. And some different remarks, especially in regard to Browning offering comments about other poets. And so it's, again, a useful commentary, and it's a very long particular commentary. And again, I'm just sort of going through it, and you can look at it. And he just offers all these. Here's about Andrea del Sarto. This is what I was trying to get down to. Where you can look at the details and some comments that you maybe apply to that. And about Browning's work. And so you have quite a bit there to look at. And so you have those particular articles. Well, let me go back to this one. I went to the wrong one. There we go. And so we go through there. There are a couple of different ones by Bloom. And you'll notice that this one is his comment directly about Andrea del Sarto. This one is about My Last Duchess, where he looks specifically at that poem. You'll have other ones looking at My Last Duchess. Again, some of them talk about domestic violence, dramatic monologues. The Exome for Porphyria's Lover is one of the dramatic monologues that deals with domestic violence. Then you'll see Elizabeth Barrett Browning, who during their lifetime, she was probably the more famous, more critically famous poet as compared to her husband. But his reputation is much higher now, and he's regarded as a much stronger poet than she, but she is still really good. And you have an overview here, some different ones about her sonnets that you probably know those better. This is really good about her commentary about being a feminist poet. And again, if you just click on this, yeah, I did it the wrong way. Hold on, let me. Well, no, I can do it. Hold on. Lowercase down, and there we go. This is the article here. It gives you a little aspect here, and it's a really good article talking about her poetry, especially Aurora Leigh, which is a major poem by Barrett Browning, where she discusses and presents the idea about women in that particular one. And you'll see this one, lengthy article, but it talks about her view about a woman in a world. Now, what's really interesting is that, of course, she was a poet who lived in Victorian England at a time when women had limited rights. She lived at home. When she and Robert Browning met, she was living at home. Now, she'd been ill and an invalid for part of her adult life. So she and Robert Browning, he had admired her and had set up an introduction with her, and they had become close. Her father objected. Mr. Barrett did not trust Robert Browning and didn't like him, so he refused for them to be able to meet anymore. So they eloped. She literally had to run away from home to get married, and she was 40 years old at the time. 40-year-old, famous poet. She really was. She was already famous. Well known. Reputation very solid. But because she was a single woman, she had to live at home, and her father objected to the men that she would know, and he had a right to do that. He literally controlled, and so she had to run away. And had to elope for marriage. So, writing as a feminist, she has some strong views about roles as what women should be allowed to do in society, and those came through in her work at times. So it's really good work. Again, looking at this one, you have some other ones here about her sonnets, which they're called sonnets from the Portuguese because Robert Browning's nickname for Elizabeth was his little Portuguese due to her dusky complexion and dark brown hair. He said she reminded him of somebody from Portugal. So when she wrote these sonnets, she took a first published edition and gave it to her husband because they were dedicated to him. They're all about their relationship. And so you can see those. And here's one about Aurora Leigh. Again, about the sonnets, and so you can look at those. Again, about her heroine, which that also discusses Aurora Leigh, among others. Byron, again, details about him are offered there. Byron and Keats and Shelley are romantic poets, the second generation, who were highly influential in what they were doing. Again, articles over those. Tennyson is a Victorian. Comes a little late. He's contemporary of Robert Browning. He and Robert Browning were probably the two strong British poets of the 1840s, 50s, and 60s. His reputation actually a little more established in the 30s. You can see details about those. T.S. Eliot is an American / British poet. Born in America, raised in America, but then would later go to England to pursue further schooling after he graduated from Harvard, and then eventually took British citizenship. He is sometimes considered the father of modern poetry. Very influential figure. Really good poet. And you have all sorts of details here about particular poems such as The Wasteland, which is considered a book-length poem. It's written in 5 different sections. He has other poets, 4 quartets, a compilation of different poems put together. The Holloman individual poems, Gerontion and Journey of the Magi. Love Song to Alfred Prufrock, an important poem. And so you have a number of these for his as well. Wordsworth is the father of Romanticism in England. He and Samuel Taylor Coleridge published a book called Lyrical Ballads in 1798. They really started a romantic movement in England. Romanticism focused upon nature. They had focus on emotions and feelings rather opposed to logic and reason that the neoclassic age, just before the Romantic age, had focused upon. It looks at this idea of trying to allow spontaneity, to consider man and man's role in the world beyond just scientific aspects. It's not about Romanticism in this way. It's not about soft music and dim lights or anything like that. No, it does focus on emotions and as contrasted to reason, that man can express himself through what he feels, not what he thinks. And so those are the key aspects about Romanticism. And Wordsworth was key in that. A number of his works were published in Lyrical Ballads. Later he would publish a very lengthy work called The Prelude. And it's a major work there. And you can see some of the details here. Tintern Abbey, which is a shortened version of the title. Everybody calls it Tintern Abbey because the full title is Lines Written Above Tintern Abbey Upon Viewing the... And it keeps on going. So you have some of those for you. Some of his shorter works, such as The World Is Too Much With Us, Late and Soon Getting and Spending We Lay Waste Our Powers, really good. So you can see some of the articles here. A couple of those are, there's lines composed a few miles above Tintern Abbey, and it keeps on going. Some of these are overviews. Whenever you see an overview over an author or a particular poem, it's going to give you just a general commentary about the work or about the poet and the ones that that poet does. Yeats is again a modern poet, early 20th century. Nobel Prize winner, as T.S. Eliot was. Yeats is an outstanding poet. He has some really good works. Just strong ideas and views they offers, and they're just really good. This is from a book. Twain Publishers did a series in, I guess, the 70s and 80s, where they, that's 1970s, 1980s, I better clarify that, which they had a particular writer offer a book. They weren't very long books, but offer sort of general comments about the particular writer's significance and look at specific works. And that's what Peterson did here, where he looks in chapter 5, he's looking at a particular theme and attitude in Yeats' poetry, and just does sort of a general view of several poems in that particular chapter. And so really good and useful series of books. Edna St. Vincent Millay is an American poet, really good. She is an interesting one. She writes in the early 20th century, and she has some really good sonnets as you look at her work. And you see some of those articles. Robert Frost, again, a writer who is probably one of the better known American writers. He's a 20th century who really found his reputation when he moved to England for a while, published a collection there. It was very well received critically, so that when he came back to America, because England had praised this American poet, now America embraced him. And so you have some different articles here on him and on particular works, such Isolation, Stages of Life, and then looking at particular poems such as Home Burial, very good poem. Um, After Apple Picking, The Woods, Road Not Taken, and of course you're asked to, well, your daily assignments over the poetry unit is to answer a couple of questions over Road Not Taken and Stopping by Woods. So you see those. Langston Hughes, American poet, part of the Harlem Renaissance. He also wrote plays, but better known for his poetry. And you can see the details here. Some really good articles. Again, you'll see some of those. The American Dream. This is a really good comment here by Tunk. They're very short, but they're really good. And let me open this one up for you. Again, show you it's not necessarily a very long article. Let's see if I have to do it this way. Yeah, there you go. Again, it talks about some of the key aspects about the American Dream and views. And again, you'll see it's not very long. So it does a very focused comment on the particular theme, this theme of the American Dream. And so if you look at that one, and then you look at another one by Tunk about freedom, you see there's a couple of ideas you could look at, apply those to Hughes's poems, and discuss how those poems reflect the American dream and a sense of freedom. That leads you into a thesis and an approach to the poems, and before you know it, you have your essay written. That's a really solid approach to it. I put Petarch in here because he's a sonnet. It's referenced about Petarch in the Elizabeth Browning articles. I thought, well, Petarch is part of this. Sonnets, again, really good. Again, you might like to look at it. I thought, so you might lean towards some classical. We're talking 14th century for Petarch. And then I have Claude McKay, another one of the poets coming out of the Harlem Renaissance. Again, a very good poet. Born in Jamaica, moved to Harlem. Writes some really good ideas. Some of those same ideas, the themes such as freedom in the Hughes poems, those could be ideas that you can apply to Claude McKay's too. He's just a really good poet and writer overall. Gwendolyn Brooks, American poet, also a part of the African American. She's a little later than the Harlem Renaissance. She's more in the 50s and 60s. Really good, and she's looking at especially at urban life and the situation that people faced in that time, in that era. She's just really good. Really good. And her poems are very interesting to read. And then Adrienne Rich, you have a section in your textbook over her, which you might find useful. And I gave you some articles here. American writer in the 60s, 1960s, and into the 70s. Again, part of the feminist views and attitudes, and really sound writer. Diving into the Wreck is a good one. It doesn't have an author listed for it, but it's just sort of a general overview. And then Wilfred Owen, a British poet from the early part of the 20th century, killed in World War I. His poems came out after his death, and that's when it really didn't receive much attention. It's going to be really about 40 years later, during the 1960s, as works are re-examined. The students at Cal Berkeley are sometimes credited with giving popularity to and a rise of critical study of Owen. His works became associated with the protests against Vietnam. He writes about a number of experiences and details in the war, World War I. And they're just really strong poems, really good. And you have several of these offered here. You have a couple of those in your textbook too that you can look at. Dulce Decorum Est is one of them. This is a good article by Murray here called The Poet of War, where it talks about what it is that Owen accomplished in his poetry. Disabled, good one. And then I have Emily Dickinson for you, American poet, 19th century. Looks at a number of issues, themes, really strong. And of course, I had to include Dickinson. My master's thesis is all about her writing, and so I have to include her. And so these are the articles I included for you. Again, if you go to, for instance, the Gale Literature Resource Center, you can look for other articles. Again, you can do an advanced search. If you want to look at something further about Elizabeth Barrett Browning, you can do that. If you go to the balloons, let me open that one up in a new window for you. You can also do a further search here if you want to look at some more. Again, I didn't put every article up there for you. That over a particular poet, I couldn't do that. It would take too long, and there are a number of those available. So again, your focus on the research paper is to select a poet whose poetry you find engaging and interesting. Make a decision about what approach you want to discuss in regard to the poem that you're going to look at. And again, my suggestion would be 3 or 4, and that way you're going to analyze in depth each of those. If you did 3, if you do 400, 500, 600 words over that particular poem, easily done. Then if you do 3 of them, well, you've got, with your introduction and conclusion, you have your 2,000 plus words for your research paper. If you're going to look at one particular poem, then what you can do, you want to make sure you do a very in-depth study, which may you have to have this bigger idea that you want to look at and really explore the poem very carefully. Now, some of the poems lend themselves to that. For instance, T.S. Eliot's The Love Song Jail for Prufrock is a lengthy poem which has a number of issues that can be looked at and discussed. And same thing with the monologues of the dramatic monologues by Robert Browning. Any particular one of those could be done individually, but you might want to look at a couple. If you're looking at Barrett Browning, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, I'd go with, if you're going to go with her sonnets, choose 3 or 4 of those, maybe 5, and discuss what they say, show in that way. So again, this is what you're looking at. Under your poetry unit, I have some discussions about the different works, some different aspects. This is an interesting article, The Road Not Taken. You might want to look at that as you're preparing to do the daily assignment. I have some videos posted for you about Browning's My Last Duchess. This one is a really good one. I have you the text of Love Song Jail for Prufrock. Since it's not in the textbook anymore, I did put it up there in case you want to look at that to consider for your research paper. And then I have a video over that. You also have the Yale lecture over T.S. Eliot, some notes about Prufrock. Try to give you some details there. How to go about explicating, examining, and explaining a poem. Have a couple of examples there for you, which gives you an idea how you can approach a poem and look at it. For instance, looking at this one, if it will call up right. There we go. This takes The Road Not Taken and does a discussion of that particular one. And you'll see just for this one particular writing, and again you have some notes there about what he wants to do. They gave a fairly sound discussion of this one poem. So again, if you choose a couple other by Frost, you'd have more than enough for your research paper. So again, I try to give you a couple of examples how to approach those, how to go about explaining. That's all the word explication means. It means an explaining of. This one is from Arkansas State. Again, it's sort of a commentary about how to approach a particular poem. Again, little comments here that looks at called Counting the Beats. It says this one you can discuss tone, rhetorical devices, characterization, etc. And so they give you the poem first, and then here's the actual explication, where it talks about the tone of the poem and the views, how the voice offers this tone of bleak hopelessness, while the dialogue between the pairings does not progress. And so here's your thesis in this particular aspect. And so then it looks at the poem, it goes through the lines, you'll see how the lines are done. Again, quoting 2 lines, putting the slash between. It does a discussion about the comments, isolation, suggesting loneliness and negativity. So again, nice, thorough discussion of the work. And that's what the explication is supposed to be, where it's a thorough discussion of the meanings of the work and what's being revealed and how it's being revealed. And again, you can see the length on this particular one, where it's looking at only one poem. And it gives a very lengthy discussion of it. And so that's what you can do for your research paper, again, incorporating some of the supportive remarks from the secondary sources. And so it's really not going to be as complex of a work. If you like poetry and can study poetry, it's there for you. Again, I have details about how to approach poetry, some critical studies about the works, what to look at, and how those are set up for you to help you as you're getting ready to work on your research paper. I hope this will help you. I'm going to get this posted, and I'll send out an email and an announcement that this video has been posted. I'm going to post it under the drama essay because I did talk about that first, but I will also post it under the research paper. So it's going to be posted twice. So don't be confused by that, and I'll make sure I put a note on there about that one. Alright, again, I'm looking forward to your assignments and your essays over drama coming in. And if you overlooked or something happened for you in regard to the 2 daily assignments over drama, please make sure you send those to me as attachments so that I can upload them to turn in and make sure you get grades for those.